And then what you get is a really nice, relaxed, very, very soft. Ugh, I got it in my mouth. And I hope I didn't get lipstick on this. Did I get lipstick on this? No, it's good. It's safe. Hi, and welcome back to my knitting podcast series and to my channel. I am so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Samantha and I am the knitter and knitwear designer behind the Strikkechick. So before I dive into my video, and I have quite a bit of works in progress and finished objects and acquisitions to share with you today, because it's been a while since I've done one of those, I think, and I've been kind of thinking about it. It's been in the back of my mind as I've been knitting up, which like, oh gosh, I showed this to you guys as a sleeve and now it's a sweater. So it's high time for an update. Before I give you an update though, I wanted to do a few quick thank yous. And the first one is to all of you, because I just hit 1K subscribers. And that's insane, you guys. I've been doing this for like a month now, and I never expected this many people to just want to sit here and listen to me talk about knitting and yarny things and designing and my life in the Arctic Circle. If you don't know from before, I live in Tromsø, Norway, which is like in the Arctic Circle of Norway. But yeah, gosh, really feeling the love. And so thank you. So happy that you want to see more from me about those things. And the second one specifically is to Amy Palko of The Meaningful Stitch, who very kindly gave me a shout out on her last podcast. And if you haven't, I'll link to her podcast series below so you can check her out. But she is just such a warm, friendly person, and that comes across so well in her knitting podcasts, where she just has the most beautiful works in progresses and finished objects, and just I mean, she's a joy to watch and a joy to knit along with. And I think she's celebrating her 2-year podcast anniversary, or she just celebrated it a couple days ago, so congratulations, what an achievement. But yeah, if you can't tell by what I'm wearing today, summer is over, sadly, in Tromsø. We had, if you watch my second vlog, the one where I talked about Arctic beaches, and I'll link it wherever the link goes, I showed you guys some pictures and videos of what summer looked like in the Arctic Circle, and oh my gosh, how I miss it. A month later, I think we're done. I think the season is over, and so I'm back in sweaters. And what I'm wearing today actually is my Adams Morgan sweater pattern, which I don't really have that much space, but I'll try to like pop up and show you guys a little bit. It was named after my favorite area of Washington, D.C., which is kind of my hometown. I grew up in the suburbs of D.C., and I used to work really close to Adams Morgan, so I would go in there quite a bit with coworkers and just grab food and do some window shopping, and it was just very inspired by the diversity of it all, and just kind of, it felt kind of like this, I don't know, parts of DC kind of feel like they've been very gentrified, but Adams Morgan didn't feel like that. It felt really nice and really authentic, and so I kind of, that's what, because I kind of went a little ham on textures and just kind of mashing stuff together and colors and all of that in one sweater. And I was like, you know what, this is just a bunch of different stuff that's like mashed together and it works. And that's kind of that, oh, Adams Morgan to me. So yeah, that's its namesake. It's knit in Hobby Tweed Delight in the shade Pink Confetti. And I think quite a few of my test knitters used the same yarn, and some of them used other tweedy yarns and solid colored yarns, and all of it just looked really, really nice. So if you want to see more of that, you can check out the hashtag Adams Morgan sweater on Instagram, and I will link to the pattern below as well if you're interested in starting on your fall sweater knitting, because I sure have. And I will show you some of the sweaters I've already whipped up for fall, and then some of the ones that are on my needles coming soon. And I think I'm trying to get a rush on the sweaters that I have on the needles right now, which is why I don't have too many big new works in progress to show you, because exciting news, I am actually going to take my first stateside vacation since moving to Norway in 2020, because I haven't seen my parents in 2 years, you guys. Pandemic related reasons, and kind of I just didn't have the vacation days, and they didn't really have the time either. They have elderly relatives in a different country, so they've been kind of prioritizing visiting them, and you know, totally understandable. But I'm very, very excited to be going home and to see them. And I don't want to bring my knitting to near DC, because I think I've been checking the weather forecast, just like anticipating it, because it's been 12 degrees Celsius and raining out here, but I think it's like 27 and sunny over there, so it's like, oh god, yes. So I'll want to do many things outside and probably not sit there and knit. And I also have quite a lot of yarn that's waiting for me in the States, so if I'm going to sit there and knit, I think I would rather pick up a new project with those yarns instead of kind of bringing something all the way here that's going to become extra luggage, and then I won't be able to load up on all my US goodies on the way back. So mostly finished objects, a couple works in progress, and then a couple stash acquisitions that will stay untouched for the time being until I get back from my vacation and start my swatching plans. And I've also got my coffee over here while I talk to you in this really fun little yarn mug. I feel like I connected with, if you've seen Knitting Traditions, Inga, she is another Norwegian podcaster, just very laid back, very relaxed. I love watching her while I knit. And she has this thing that she does where she drinks tea, I believe, typically in her podcast, and she has to like wait for it to cool down quite a bit, 'cause she likes colder tea, and I feel like I'm the same way. So I have my like very big, very wide yarn mug with coffee in it so that I can cool down while I talk to you and drink coffee. Okay. So it's gonna stay there, and feel free to grab a beverage and join me if you want. My first finished object for you, actually, if you watched because I did a video series recently. I say series, it was 2 videos. But I had these videos where I talked about all of my leftover yarn scraps, and how I wanted to catalog them, and I wanted to find a purpose for them, and I wanted to just kind of, because it's growing so much, I think. I have all these single skeins and part of skeins, and I just kind of, I want to get them out of the way, clear some space for the rest of the scraps that will surely make their way into my scrap drawer. And so I made these little mittens. And they're very off-season, but you know, winter is coming soon up here. Skiing season is just around the corner. And so I made these with, and I'm gonna try to like get you so you can see the variegation better over here. But these are knit in Drops Air, double threaded Drops Air on 7mm needles, with 6mm for the cuff. And I'm just gonna, it's actually cold enough to do this out today, but not for too long. Just pop them on and show you the fit. Because I made this up as I went. So it's nothing, I mean, I think it's a very, very simple mitten construction. There's nothing too fancy about making them. I just kind of wanted to use up my scrap yarn. And I'm calling them the Glacier Mittens, just because when I'm hiking up in Tromsø, it's kind of, these are the colors that remind me of glaciers. Kind of, you have the really pretty bright blue water, and you have kind of the permafrost that stays on the top of the mountain, and then kind of the rocky, muddy kind of landscape that you walk through to get to the top. So yeah, inspired by nothing about the actual design itself, but more the color choice that I use. These are going to be called the Glacier Mittens, and I think I'm gonna release them as a free pattern on my website later this year when mittens are, oh now it's getting hot, when mittens are a more seasonally appropriate thing to wear. because my boyfriend already requested a pair, so that means that I can use more of my scrappy yarn and that I can knit 2 different sizes and kind of get an idea of how this grades, and then I'll be able to put it on the website as a free pattern for your scraps, because I think this is a really cute way to use up yarn scraps. I mean, it's convenient, it's a pair of mittens I never would have had, and I didn't have to buy any extra yarn for it or take any yarn away from my existing stash for like kind of designated projects, if that makes any sense. Like I didn't have to cut into anything, it was all waste yarn. So yeah, these are the Glacier Mittens. And they're my smallest finished object. I actually have some things to show you that I don't think I even showed you on works in progress or acquisitions, just because they're that new. And the first one is, I'm gonna grab a sip of my coffee again just in case it gets too cold. Don't drop that in the coffee. Oh boy, okay. My first finished object that I have to show you is the Drop It Like It's Hot cardigan by Kara Knits Eng. And I kind of, what's cool about this is like it has this, it's like a modified 2x2 rib pattern. I don't know if you can, yeah, it's got like this drop stitch in the middle of this 2x2 ribbing. And it just creates this really nice overall texture that is just super, super cute. It's really, really nice to wear over summer dresses. And unfortunately, because of my timing in completing it, I didn't really get to wear it over any summer dresses. So it will be there waiting for next summer, probably, hopefully, unless I take some more vacations between now and then, please. But I knit mine in, she actually, I love that Kara does this. And she has a podcast on YouTube too that I will link to, and she is very, very good about uploading new videos. She always has new ones. She does very regular updates on her finished objects and her works in progress, and I aspire to do that better. But she gives you a lot of yarn options in her patterns. Which is really nice because she uses a lot of yarns that I don't think are so easy to find outside of North America, and then she also has yarn options that are very accessible to me in Norway. And 2 of the ones that she recommended that that my local yarn store has are Sandnesgarn Kos and Sandnesgarn Børstet Alpaca. And I already had some Børstet Alpaca in my stash for another project that I kind of just wound up not doing just because I kind of lost the motivation to knit it. And so I used Børstet Alpaca for this, which is, it gives it a slightly less stretchy fabric, but I think that's okay. I mean, there's enough give here, and I honestly, I think it's nicer as something that doesn't stretch out too much when it's blocked, especially because it is kind of a lace pattern. So it does have the tendency to get a lot bigger than you intend. But it's knit on 8mm needles, which is honestly, I think that's the reason why, because I mentioned on the last podcast where I updated you guys about my works in progress and my finished object and what I was planning on casting on. I also told you about how I've been just really addicted to using larger knitting needles at the moment. And one of the downsides of using larger knitting needles is that projects will just fly by, and that gives me almost no time to give you an update on how it's going and how it's knitting up. It's just kind of like, oh, I'm gonna start on this, and a week later, oh, I finished this. So you, surprise. It's the color, I think the color is actually, okay, depends on where I sit, right? But I think if I sit back here, the color is picking up pretty well, pretty true to what it actually is. It's called Lys Blå Grå, which means light blue gray. And the color code is 6220, if that's easier. I know on phones, because I have this problem, Sandnesgarn only has the color codes and not necessarily the names of the colors, so it's easier sometimes to just go by the number. It's 110 meters in a 50-gram skein of bursted alpaca, which is also quite nice because airier yarns, you do just get a better meterage. And so for someone who, I wouldn't call myself a budget knitter because I am certainly not, but I'm also a budget conscious knitter. And so for those purposes, it's nice to have airier yarns because you just get more in a skein of the same weight. So that's nice that you have 110 meters in a 50-gram skein and you can use it on 8mm needles. So I got this whole cardigan out of 3 skeins and I had 5 in my stash. So now I have 2 kind of in my leftover yarn pile, which you have probably seen if you watched the second part of my stash video. And it's cropped, so it sits, and I'll have a picture in here because I did take photos for Kara's release post on Instagram. But it sits kind of right above my waistband typically when I wear jeans and yoga pants and stuff like that. And the sleeves are quite big and balloony, and they end in this little cuff. So I actually think I did it a bit tight, but I can fit my hand into the cuff. So it is possible. It's not a cuff that will fall off my hand anytime soon. So that is, last thing about this sweater. So it is, it looks like mohair, right? It looks like one of those thick mohairs that I really like working with, but I know a lot of people are very sensitive to mohair. And if you are, bursted alpaca is a great alternative because this is so non-itchy and very nice and soft to have against your skin. So keep that in mind if you like mohair, but you do not like wearing mohair so much. If you watched my second podcast, and I keep mentioning these. I will, every time I mention them, I will link them so you know what I'm talking about if you feel like you're missing any context here. But I showed you this swatch with drops air and drops kid silk, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect yarn combination. I love this so much, the color wise and texture and how it felt and everything about it. And now that swatch is a sweater. And I've been saving this reveal. Actually, I did talk about my leftover yarn and kind of, but yeah, this is the Tuscan Sweater. And oh my gosh, this is my baby. I love this. I love this so, so, so much. Earlier in July, I went on a conference trip from work to London. It was the, what is the name? It was the International Society on Thrombosis and Hemostasis. So if any of you guys were there, I don't know. I mean, I brought my knitting with me every day, right? When I went to the conference, I had my knitting in my purse with my laptop and everything. And I was like, if I see another knitter, I'm going to take my knitting out and I will just knit because I mean, who really, you're just sitting there listening to people, and I honestly do a better job of listening when I am actively, my hands are doing something. But I didn't see any other people knitting, so maybe if there were other knitters there, they were all thinking the same thing. But I brought this sweater to the conference in London, and I mostly just knitted in the airport and in my hotel room when I was relaxing. And yeah, it finished off so quickly. I had finished the body and the sleeves when I came back from London, and then I knit the yoke in a day. And it was super fast because it's on 7mm needles, 6mm for the rib. But yeah, it's mostly, you knit it in stockinette, which you then flip inside out when you join everything. So you get this really nice, and I hope these colors show up. The lighting is just not the best today, so I apologize for that. But you can see kind of these gold flecks. I'm gonna hide my face and then maybe you can see it better. These gold flecks in with the reverse stockinette. And that's really what I wanted to come across in the final sweater. So you have this whole texture with this gold flecky stuff going on, and then this really nice, I think, lace detailed yoke that has built-in decreases. And then what you get is a really nice, relaxed, very, very soft, well, I got it in my mouth, very soft, comfy sweater. And I hope I didn't get lipstick on this. Did I get lipstick on this? No, it's good. It's safe. Okay. Yes. So it's actually, I wrote up the pattern and it is in testing as we speak. It's gone out to the English testers, so I do my test knitting calls in Norwegian and I do them in English. And I've been trying to shift into just doing them in English. That's what I did with Banya, because I don't think any of my previous Norwegian test knitters applied. Just because it's, I mean, I think I can write patterns in Norwegian, but it's very, very hard for me to keep up a group chat in Norwegian. Just because I am still learning the language. I wouldn't say that I'm fluent yet. So just in terms of like day-to-day workload, it is a lot easier for me to just kind of roll out of bed, check my phone half groggy in English and reply to a message than it is in Norwegian. It's basically impossible for me unless I'm like using 100% of my brain power in the language. So I've been trying to keep them in English, but so many of my previous test knitters for Norwegian versions applied for Tuscan, which just made me so happy. And so I am going to be translating the pattern and doing the test in Norwegian as well. So you'll start to see Tuscan popping up on Instagram, because I think I sent out Vanya, my red cardigan, for a tester call just like a week or so before I put Tuscan out for a tester call. And there's already Vanya photos on Instagram. I am actually so thrilled with how into it the testers are. It's so validating and I love it. I love seeing all the yarn choices and everyone kind of just like going at it with the yoke, and oh, it makes me so happy. And I think the Tuscan group of testers is kind of just as into it. So this should be popping up very, very soon. So you can check it out, and I am hoping for a release mid-October if this is something you're interested in knitting. So yeah, keep an eye out for that, and I will link to, I think I'll have like a coming soon link somewhere, so I will link to that if you are interested as well. And I actually have, this was not supposed to be a finished object, you guys. I wrote because I write myself little notes for the vlog, right, that I can just kind of go and refer to while I'm filming, so that I don't just go off on these endless tangents, even though I think I still do a pretty good job at talking about unrelated things. But I had a work in progress that you may have remembered from my knitting for 24 hours on a bus type video when I got stranded in Oslo and I had to take a bus all the way back to Tromsø. And I bought this yarn at a place called Strikkechick, a yarn store in a mall in Oslo. And I started knitting it on the bus, and I kind of knit up almost the whole body, and I think it was almost the whole body on the bus ride. And then I knit up the sleeves, and I am done with it now. Oh gosh, I mean, look at this color. So this has been, I know I mentioned it in that video, but this has been kind of a really hot seasonal color for a little bit. I don't know about the rest of the world, but definitely Scandinavia. It's been kind of like, they're like, oh, this is the year's freshest color, or it's very trendy. A lot of yarn companies are releasing new colorways with this color because they know that it's kind of, it's very popular. It's very kind of in the moment kind of. I don't work in the fashion industry. I don't know the terms. But it's kind of like bright colors are having a bit of a comeback, and I am here for it. I love this. This is such a gorgeous color. Can you see it better if I like pop it up to the camera? I sure hope you can. And so I'm not kind of in the way messing with the lighting. But This is knit in a color called Jelly Bean Green, which is the cutest color name, in Pure Gint and Tin Silk Mohair from Sonness Garn, which is, as I mentioned in that past video, I use this yarn combination because Pure Gint doesn't really grow with blocking, and Tin Silk Mohair helps even more with preventing growth when blocking. I've noticed when I knit a yarn together with a strand of silk weight mohair, it really does help with the, I don't want to say integrity, what is that word? It helps the garment maintain the same or similar tension post-blocking as it did pre-blocking, if that makes any sense. But that's why I paired these two yarns, because I didn't have time or the amenities to block my swatch when I was sitting in a hotel room in Oslo. So I used a yarn combination that I knew from prior experience would not grow so much. Now, I haven't blocked this yet. I've actually, because I finished it on Friday night and I'm filming on a Sunday. And Pure Gint is a relatively dense yarn. It's got 90 meters in a 50 gram skein. And it's recommended knitting on 4.5 millimeter needles. And when I held it together with Tin Silk Mohair, I knit the combo on 5.5s. So it's a very, very dense fabric, and it would take a pretty long time to dry, I think. So I haven't blocked it just so I could show you guys before I put it on the blocking board. It actually would not be the absolute worst thing in the world if this fabric relaxed a little. I purposefully made it kind of fitted because I was like, it's a dense fabric and it's 1x1 rib, basically. It's 1x1 rib with a little 1x1 rib mod, I want to say, because it's got this little like eyelet, you know, crossover stitch, let me show you, thing in between. Which is just a really fun, very easy to knit texture. But I think out of, what is it, the fabric characteristics of this, just like if you've ever blocked 1x1 ribbing or any kind of ribbing really, it does kind of relax a bit when it gets blocked, right? So I do expect it to kind of relax a bit, not too much, because I don't intend to stretch it out when I block. I just intend to kind of like soak it, dry it out, and the thing that you do with the towel where you like it out of water and lay it flat to dry. And I think that should be just enough relaxing of the fabric to be a very comfortable fitting sweater. And I have taken pretty decent notes while I was writing this up, just because I have a different rate of raglan decreases. I don't know if you can see the raglan decrease line here. Yes, okay, but yeah, because the sleeves are meant to be kind of tight, right? But like I didn't want to decrease the whole sleeve as it got to the top, so I changed the rate of decreases. So some rows were body only, and some rows were body and sleeves, and some rows there's no decreases. And so I took pretty good notes on that and how I did it. But I don't really want to start writing up the pattern or grading for different sizes until I am done with my vacation. Just because if I start it now, I'm going to feel like I want to finish it, and I want to spend my vacation just relaxing with my family and doing low effort knitting. If I do decide to knit with the yarn that I have in the States, I want it to be kind of low effort and not grading and pattern writing. Even though I do enjoy those things, it just feels like more of a chore than just knitting for knitting's sake. But I will, because I get back to Norway in September. So at that point I will pick back up where I left off, and I will start the process for this. And then there will be a tester call probably by the end of the month of September for this sweater, if you are interested in knitting one for yourself. And I haven't actually taken photos of myself wearing it yet, photos or videos, but I will have a couple so that you can actually see how it looks like when it's on. It is very flattering, if I do say so myself. I think it's a really nice, it's a dress-up sweater, if such a thing exists, because it has a very nice kind of polished fit to it, that doesn't feel, I mean, give me a drop shoulder sweater any day. I love drop shoulder, but it just does not feel like it belongs in a professional setting. But I think this very easily could. Maybe in a softer color, but love me some bright Kelly green, so I wouldn't change a thing. But yeah, so if you are interested in that, you will find out more details on Instagram, or you can sign up for my newsletter, and I'll put a little link down below. I've actually been pretty awful at sending them out just because I don't want to feel like I'm spamming you guys, but I will send out tester calls for this on the newsletter as well. That is it for finished objects, and we are moving on to works in progress. And I'm super excited to show you guys the first one. Here it comes. If you've been following along with me from my, oh God, from my first ever podcast, you will recognize this bad boy. Oh God, okay. This is my Arctic Sommergenser, or Arctic summer sweater, and oh my God, those colors pop on this camera. But I have been knitting this for my boyfriend, and it's been so long, you guys. I started knitting this because I have this Instagram highlight, right, where I put all my works in progress, and it's mostly just to motivate me to like go in there and finish. So I don't have any UFOs. They either are frogged and abandoned or they are finished. We don't have anything living in purgatory. But I have had this in my works in progress highlight for exactly 26 weeks. And today it might actually be finished, because all I have left is, he doesn't want, the pattern calls for a high collar. It wants you to knit 16 centimeters of 2x2 ribbing and then kind of fold it over and sew it down. But he doesn't want that. He wants a shorter folded collar. So I will do 6 centimeters and then fold it in for him. So it's like exactly the same height as Tuscan, for example. But yeah, it is so close to, I hope it fits him, because I knit the size large for him, which I think he would actually be a medium, which is the second size, but I was also using Drops Lima for most of it, which is a thinner yarn than Let Leppy. And I know that my tension is kind of wonky when it comes to color work. I tend to knit pretty tightly. Even though I do my absolute best to keep my floats long, I do kind of knit tightly. So I sized up for him, and this is the, guys, I don't know if you can see this whole thing, or if this is the largest thing I've ever knit, size-wise, and because I think, for me, I like cropped sweaters for just about everything. I mean, even my Turgensers, which this is going to be for Kevin. A Turgenser is like a sweater that you can take out hiking, and you take it skiing, and you just kind of, you put it on at a campfire. You basically, it's an outdoor activewear kind of sweater, so it's supposed to be a bit large and roomy, and you can rough it up and it's fine. And my Turgensers that I have knit for myself are kind of cropped, just because I don't like the feeling of almost sitting on your sweater. I like them to kind of sit right at the waistband of my hiking pants. But this is really long. It's super, super long, for me anyway. So that's why I think it's taken me so long to knit, because it's just such a big project, but it is almost done. And I'm so happy with how this color work came out. I mean, look at the little suns and the foxes. These are little fox faces. I want to think they're fox faces, but I don't know. I just think that is super, super cute. And he's very excited for this. I'm very excited to give it to him. I've added in, the pattern doesn't say to do so, but I've added in short rows in the back, because he doesn't really like, the feeling of, because you know when you don't knit short rows, and for some reason the neck seems to come up really high in the front and it kind of goes really low in the back, and it's just not a very comfortable fit, especially when you're sitting down. So I tried to avoid that, and I put in some additional short rows before I decreased for the collar. So you can see how it'll come, because I think this is exactly, yeah, this is how many short rows I added. So it'll be like this much higher in the back than here in the front. And I hope he likes it. I hope it fits. That's the downside about bottom-up sweaters. And for some reason, I love me a bottom-up sweater. I will knit all of my raglans almost from the bottom up. The only sweater I have ever designed from the top down is not even a sweater, it's Mohair, the cardigan. And I do want to experiment some more with different constructions, just because I know people have their preference and not everyone wants to knit a bottom-up raglan sweater, even though that might be the way I prefer to knit my sweaters. But the downside is, right, that you can't try it on as you go. To be fair, you know how, okay, so I heard very recently, and I forget, I'm so sorry, I forget whose podcast this was, but they were talking about stitch wires and how it's more of a Scandinavian or European thing. I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked for them really outside of Norway, so I can't confirm or deny. But they were talking about stitch wires and how the little things that you put on the tip of your needle that like fit on the tip, and then you can like move the stitches over onto the stitch wire, and then you can try on your garment, for example. I tried that one time with the Mohair cardigan. Because I didn't know how the yoke was going to fit over my arms. So I moved the stitches onto a stitch wire, and as I was like halfway through, the stitch wire just like off the tip of the needle and a bunch of stitches just fell out. And I had like my life flashed before my eyes for a minute there, and I had to like pick up every individual stitch and like remember where the yarn overs were so I could like put in a little yarn over where, and it was just a bit of a disaster, honestly. So I don't know how keen I am when a project is almost finished to like go for a stitch wire now. So he will just try it on when it's done. I hope that like, I always have not second thoughts, but I have like a bit of paranoia as I'm knitting up the collar for any sweater, because it's always on 40 centimeter needles for me. And I'm like, oh my God, that'll never fit over my head. And I have a pretty small head. Kevin's head's like a bit bigger. So I'm like, oh, I don't even know if this will fit over my head. How's it gonna fit over his head? But I think it'll be fine. I think it's okay. I'm being paranoid. I just look here and I'm like, well, there's probably space. It'll fit. I hope the yoke fits. That's the big thing, because I hold it up to me and I'm like, this is just a bit bigger than I am. I don't know if you can like, yeah. So I hope it fits him. Block it extra hard. I don't know. But I'm very, very excited to. I had 2 goals before leaving for the States, and it was to finish this sweater and to finish this sweater, and I think I will get there before I actually leave. So that's super exciting. The next work in progress I have to show you is this, which everything just automatically got lighter. This is my mohair, or I guess a better word would be my thick mohair cardigan. It's knit with Lina Langmo Påfugl from Dalegarn, which is now rebranded as Myk Påfugl, which means soft peacock, from Dalegarn, which is a Norwegian yarn company, which is actually, it's not very unique yarn in a way. Like it's very, I think in terms of the gauge and the fiber content and such, it's actually quite similar to other thick mohairs on the market, like hip wool fluff, which to be fair is also Norwegian yarn, but it's also pretty similar to Wool and the Gang Take Care mohair, which I understand is easily accessible in North America. I'll actually, that's one of the things I'm a bit excited for, right, is to go to some yarn shops when I'm back in the States. So if you've got DC area yarn store recommendations, please just pop them in the comments section below for me, and I will, I'll do some online, what is it called? Online window shopping kind of beforehand. So just like get an idea of like all the really pretty yarns in the area that I can go look at and potentially buy. And hopefully not fill my entire suitcase with, because I do still need space for treats, food-based treats to bring back to Norway from the States. But yeah, I've been working up this guy on 9mm needles. It's getting pretty long. Here you can see kind of, yeah. I asked you on my second podcast if you'd prefer if you preferred a cropped mohair cardigan, or if you thought that it would look nicer long. And most of you said that you think it would look nicer as a long kind of duster-like cardigan, which was honestly my idea from the start, so great minds think alike. And so it is going to be a longer duster cardigan. I'm just kind of knitting it. This is also in the top down, by the way. It's like Bonya, because I think cardigans, for some reason, are easier for me to knit raglan style top down. It's got these really poofy sleeves, which I think are super fun, because I really enjoy a nice wide relaxed sleeve. I think it would be really comfy, because the whole purpose of this was I just wanted a cardigan that I could like throw on a cold day at the beach and just kind of wear it like a blanket. And this definitely helps. So it's got this little cable detail that's not super complicated. It's got like 2 cable rows in the whole repeat with some really standard cables, and then these nice little accent colors at the cuff, which are also påfugel, but just in different colors than the white main body of it. And the cables start, I'm sorry my needles keep clacking around, you guys. The cables start all the way from the top of the cardigan. And I think I'll leave the front kind of plain, and I'll just do like a ribbed neckline or something around the entire cardigan. And I don't even know if I'll add buttons, because I don't feel like this is a cardigan design that needs buttons. It's like a throw over, like a robe cardigan kind of situation. But if you want buttons, you could probably certainly add them, because I've been doing the ribbing on 7mm needles and the main body on 9, and I think 1x1 rib and 7mm needles, you would definitely have enough in the way of like holes in the fabric to add buttons in if you wanted. And my black pants are covered in mohair now. But I think I'm taking a bit of a break on this, just for a little bit, because it just doesn't feel very seasonal anymore. So I will keep knitting it. I will do a tester call probably early 2023, but I really want to focus more on fall-based projects and a very exciting yarn collaboration that I have been keeping under wraps, but I will probably announce and talk about in my next podcast. So that's kind of taking the priority for now. And this will just be my little chill side project until I get to that. And another just really, really quick work in progress, and the last one that I have to show you is another scrappy yarn project. So this is just a little scrappy cowl with drops Nepal and drops Alaska that I've been working on. It's a little seed stitch cowl that has, because I just actually, one of the little perks about being a new knitter is that you discover things when you aren't really expecting them or looking for them, I think, in terms of knitting techniques. And so I was just like, oh, I like seed stitch. I think I'm gonna make a little seed stitch color block leftover cowl with these. And I realized that seed stitch lends itself to some really, really beautiful color changes. Like, I love how these transitions look in seed stitch. I think that's just like the cutest little gradient fade kind of effect thing. Which, yeah, just super, super cute. And so I still have, this is Drops Alaska, this brown one over here. And these 4 colors of drops Nepal. And they're almost the same, kind of in terms of yarn weight and gauge and all of that. So I have this much more of the drops Nepal to knit into this little cowl. And then I have this skein of drops Alaska that's going to be the last color. And then I'm going to just sew it to the other end, and it's going to be a little scrappy yarn cowl. Just like, It'll sit better when it's an actual cowl, but I'll grab a few pictures and I will show you guys how it looks when it's done. And this will be another little free pattern that will exist on my website for anyone who is interested in using some of their scraps in cowl form. You can have like a whole winter wardrobe made out of leftover yarn. Maybe not a sweater, but we'll see. Last but not least, I have some acquisitions to show you guys. The first of which is from Hip Knit Shop. There's the name. So, already went ahead and opened this, but I ordered, oh gosh, crinkle, I'm sorry. I ordered a sweater's quantity of hip wool in this beautiful, I believe it's called New Magic Forest Green. Look at this color. It's picking up bluer than it is in real life. Let's see if that's still, yeah, it's greener than this, just a little bit. But it's just such a nice little yarn. It's from a, Hip Wool is a Norwegian yarn company. And I was actually really interested in trying them out because they seemed like they were kind of angling for a market position similar to We Are Knitters or Wool and the Gang. And I was like, a Norwegian yarn company that's like, has similar qualities to, because I heard of We Are Knitters and Wool and the Gang when I first started knitting. And for me, that was just, as a price point, that just wasn't something I could do. And it was also kind of hard to get access to in Norway. But then I think it was Well Loved Knits who was talking about this on one of her very, very old podcast episodes. And I was like, this could be a nice little thing to try out if I'm interested in that kind of yarn. And so this is like, I think the hip wool is a single ply yarn. So I'm really hoping that it doesn't not felt, but I hope it doesn't pill that much, famous last words. I'm hoping to knit it up on 6mm needles for some kind of cardigan design in the future, maybe. I'm thinking this would be a really cute little cardigan color. It says it's 100% chunky, woolicious wool. I think it's Peruvian Highland wool. It recommends a 6mm needle size, 5 to 8, but then they have like a little note in there that says 6, and it's 80 meters per 50 grams. So it's a bit dense, but I don't know. I think it could make a really cute little cardigan. So I was thinking actually, I don't know if you guys have seen my Liz Knorr sweater. I'll pop a little photo of Liz Knorr over here. But I was thinking of making like a Liz Knorr cardigan. So like a V-neck version of that. But now I'm like, now there's so much Strikkechick out there. And I've done my interpretation of Strikkechick. I had a great time knitting Liz Knorr. I love Liz Knorr as a wardrobe staple for me. So maybe I want to try something different and choose another fun texture, or just completely veer away from Strikkechick and do some cables. But I don't know. I mean, oh, I'm sorry for all the crinkling, but what do you guys think? Is there anything that just kind of pops out at you with this yarn? Have you worked with single ply yarn before? Because this is kind of a first for me. I've been working with merinos and kind of like 4-ply, 2-ply minimum kind of yarns. So yeah, excited to swatch and figure something out with that. My next recent acquisition is also a Norwegian yarn. It is this beautiful hand-dyed mohair. I'm gonna pop it up here and see if that picks it up better. But it's from this Norwegian company called Unique Garn, hand-dyed yarns. And this is their tin mohair silk. It is 75% super kid mohair, 25% silk. And there are 420 meters in a 50-gram hank. So I bought 2 of these in the colorway Isdans or Ice Dance, which is just, it's super pretty little variegated yarns. And I love variegated yarns, but I am also kind of wary of how, because I think something I would absolutely love if more hand dyers did is have a little swatch beside their hand-dyed variegated yarns, because it looks so pretty in hank format like this, right? But I'm like, okay, but how does that knit up? Like, what would that look like as a fabric? And would the colors kind of mesh, or would they just be all over the place? I don't know. And Unique Garn actually does a great job of this. They have little swatches beside their hand-dyed yarns that you can look at. And this just stuck out to me because I was like, these are just, it's very subtle, I think. There's very little pops of color in this yarn, but they all work together really nicely. And so I bought 2 skeins of it, and I'm planning on holding it together with a yarn like Drops Nepal in the shade Natural or Off-White, something that kind of matches this neutral base, and making a little sweater out of that. I think I might actually try to make like a V-neck design or something. I haven't done V-necks in the past, but I'm like, this could be such a classy mohair, thicker needle kind of, because I know you can hold Drops Nepal mohair together and use 7mm needles, kind of like Tuscan Sweater used Drops Air and Kid Silk on 7mm, and Air and Nepal are in the same yarn group. So I could make a sweater on 7mm needles that was just like nicely structured V-neck, maybe with a couple little accents here and there in terms of structural elements. I don't quite know yet. I haven't swatched for anything, but this is living in my stash for the time being, and I am just so excited to see what it becomes. The next bit of yarn that I wanted to show you is this. It's called Miresol from Du Store Alpaca, which is another Norwegian yarn brand. This is 100% alpaca yarn. Let me see. Everything is picking up a bit differently today, but this is a little bit cooler than it looks like on camera. It's picking up a little purpler than it really is. It's actually a bit bluer. And it's, I think it's a lace weight yarn. Honestly, I picked this up on impulse, right? Because I went to the apothecary, the like a drugstore that was across from my local yarn store. So then when I went there, I just had to pop in and see what was on sale, because I have no impulse control whatsoever. So I picked up Miresol, which was on sale. And it is, they say the color is 2032. I have no idea what that is in terms of color name, but it is a, it's kind of like a little forget-me-not blue kind of color. And it's meant for use on 3.5mm needles. And it's 125 meters in a 50-gram skein. And I'm thinking about using 4mm needles and doing an all-over cable motif, because I did pick up 7 skeins of this yarn, and I think that's enough for me to knit a sweater with that has cables all over. And it's actually, this yarn is really cool because I think they donate, every time you buy one little skein of yarn from them, they donate 3 kroner to a children's school in Peru that they have set up and that they fund. So yarn with a good cause. But it's just, oh gosh, it's so nice and soft. This is my problem, right, guys, is that every time I buy yarn, I can never buy it in accessory quantity, right? I'm like, oh, it has to be a sweater quantity of this or a sweater quantity of that. And then I have all these sweater design ideas. And do I knit as fast as I pick up yarn? No, I do not. So then I just have this continuously growing sweater stash and all of these ideas for sweaters. And I mean, I think with the projects that I've shown you and the one yarn collaboration that I have yet to talk about because I don't actually have the yarn with me at the moment, that is all the sweaters I'll be able to put out pretty much by the end of 2022. So I just don't, all the ideas and none of the time, but I will get around to making stuff with these eventually, just because I don't know, I love designing. I think it's just super fun. And I guess the whole point of it at the end of the day is that slow fashion is supposed to be slow. So I guess that it's a bit of a weird complaint for me to have, but I think it's something we all wish that we could knit faster or that we could knit more. And then it's like, okay, but slow down though, because the whole kind of ethos of this hobby is that you're being sustainable in what you do. And so I don't think it's something that is necessarily that much of an issue that I have to keep reminding myself of, because I'm always mad that I can't knit faster. Or that I can't knit more, or that I can't produce more, I think, and that isn't supposed to be the point anyway. So all that to say, I buy a lot of stash yarn, and I wish I could use it faster, but I understand why I do not. The last stash acquisition that I have to show you is probably the most luxurious yarn I have ever owned in my entire life. It is Cardiff Cashmere. And this wasn't sponsored, you guys. This made like a huge dent in my wallet. That was all me. I bought this yarn. I don't know what I was thinking because it was so expensive. And I'm gonna try to get the box open and show you the beautiful yarn. Crinkle, crinkle. This is Cardiff Cashmere Classic in the Dye 572. It's this kind of marled brown and beige. And Cardiff Cashmere Classic, if you haven't worked with it or heard of it, it is 25 grams per skein, and there's 112 meters in each. And you can use it on 3.5 to 4.5 millimeter needles. And I'm gonna try to again, this is popping up a little bit cooler than it is in real life. It's like a bit more of a warm brown. Will this focus? Okay, that's as close as it's gonna get. But gosh, you guys, it's so soft. And I got 10 skeins of this because I think that's what they recommend for a sweater. And I am absolutely in love. It is the most, this is expensive yarn. It's like 200 kroner per skein, which is like $20. So I spent $200 on this box of yarn. But I'm not even sorry. Because it's so nice and it's so soft and it's so gorgeous. It's 100% cashmere. And what I am hoping to make with it, because if you've looked at my designs, and if this is any kind of indication, I am a very texture-centric knitter. I love to use different textures in my knitting, and I barely go stockinette, but I think with this yarn, it might be a case to use most stockinette and let the yarn kind of be the star of the show. So what I'm planning on doing is doing like a raglan increase, if I can show you kind of what I mean. Doing a raglan increase for the sleeves, kind of that goes on top of the shoulder with these kind of 2 increase points. And then that just goes down the sleeve like a little detail, and the rest of the body is in stockinette, just to like really let this yarn shine and kind of have the spotlight in a way, and not be kind of overshadowed by all these different textures and doodads and things that I like to put in my knitting. And I've been holding off working with it, but oh my gosh, I am so excited to cast this on. Look at this. Oh my gosh. I have a whole, I mean, funny joke, right? I started knitting because I was like, oh, this will be cheaper than buying my own, you know, natural fiber sweaters, and boy was I in for a real surprise, because I at no point in my life would I ever spend $200 on a sweater, and I just spent that money on yarn. But no regrets whatsoever. Alright, so that brings us to the end of this video, and I really hope you enjoyed hearing about some of my finished objects and my works in progress and the yarn that I've acquired recently. If there's anything that you kind of particularly liked, or like had any ideas for the yarn or anything of that nature, or just wanted to chat, feel free to drop me a comment down below. I always love to know what you guys think about what I'm showing you and what I'm talking about. As always, if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more. And if you want to come over and say hi elsewhere, I am over on Instagram and Ravelry and TikTok as the Strikkechick. And I'm also on my own website, thestrikkechick.com. And it's been so fun. And just, it's been such a good feeling to have so many of you come over and say hi on Instagram, particularly in email. It absolutely makes my day. So thank you so much. And please continue to do so. I love hearing what you're working on. I love hearing what your favorite yarns are, or hearing what your knitting journey has been like. And just having new yarny friends. That's honestly, it's the reason why I started this channel, and it's just been the best being able to connect with other people who love knitting as much as I do. So yes, keep them coming. I would love to meet more of you, or say hi to my friends on here. So until next time, because it might be a little bit until the next video, just a bit of a heads up, because I will be relaxing in the States for a little bit. But I hope to see you soon and have some more updates, and probably a lot of new acquisitions, just because of all the stateside yarn that I'll be gathering. But until next time, happy knitting! Bye!